The I don't know what made me think of this. The very first story that I ever wrote was called Any Which Way But Loose, and it didn't have words or anything. It was just a guy in a box, and the box was in the water, and you see him kind of floating along the river, and then he gets to a waterfall, and the guy falls off a cliff and dies. There was no dialogue to it at all, but it was, man, that was the first thing I had ever really done. I remember writing a Transformers story once. I want to say I was in like second or third grade. No idea where it is. From there, I sort of graduated to other things. I remember writing a series called Three the Hard Way with these three girls, one of which her name was Pookie. That was her nickname. And the nickname Pookie came with this whole, not Pookie, Poochie. It was Poochie. And it came with this whole backstory to it, like she wasn't the first Poochie to have a group. I mean, come on, man. It was like the early 90s, late 80s. Bear with me. From there, I think I did a couple of spin-offs because I was always real big on what all the characters were doing at any given time. I'm a real continuity freak. Remember there was one called 920. There was one called Epidemic, where, and again, it was always these young girls with this technology. They had invented these dog tags that also doubled as communicators, which is ironic because now we've got like Google watches that do the exact same thing. I think the first real full length story that I'd ever written was called As the Days Go By. And in the story, there's a handsome protagonist who just seems to have a lot of bad luck, but all the chicks love him. He ended up, he worked in a video store. His boss also owned a nightclub which he went to work in, and he eventually became the principal of a high school. Like that's just a natural progression. You can go from like video store to nightclub owner to principal of a high school. Like, really? But that's not the point. The point is that I've always been creative. As the days go by was 1,114 pages long, handwritten. Imagine that. That's how dedicated I was to it. From there, I wrote Class of '95, Where the Day Takes You, In Real Life. Like, there's even a Power Rangers novel floating around somewhere that I would love to share, but for copyright reasons I can't. But it's the sort of thing that gets me thinking. Like, there's always been so many things I wanted to say and so many ways I could say them. Like I said, at the heart of everything, I'm just creative. I'm just a creative person. I want to write something down, or I want to create something. That's more important. Let me say that. I want to create something, and then it invoke an emotional response from people. It was never about the money. Like, would I like to make money from writing? Absolutely. If I could create things and then make money, I would do that. But it was never about the money. I always said that if I could touch one person's heart, if one person could come up to me and say, "Yeah, I read that," and I got that in 2009. I got that. I think I was jaywalking actually. It was 2009. I was jaywalking, and a cop stopped me for jaywalking, and she goes to write me a ticket, and I give her my ID, and she's like, "Oh, you're Patrick Harris?" I said, "Yeah." She was like, "The Patrick Harris?" I was like, "Well, it's a pretty common name." And she actually had my book in the back seat of her car. She was like, "Is this you?" I said, "Yeah, that was me." And she had me autograph it. She was like, "Thank you. You know, I bought I bought this book for my daughter, and I end up loving it." And I was like, "Hey, you know, glad it could touch somebody." And man, that was the pinnacle of my writing career right there. Like, I couldn't imagine doing anything that would top that moment. But as I sit here at work, like, I miss creating, and I know I miss creating because in my mind I'm always working on a character in the wrestling game, you know? I miss creating. So, with that in mind, I think I can officially announce that I'm gonna go back to writing. Not even writing screenplays because yeah, that was the natural progression, and I wanted to write screenplays. I always thought it would be nice to have that kind of thing where we could watch them. But that's not my passion. My passion is just creating. In a perfect world, if I could create and hand it off and have somebody else do it, I would. But creating is my forte. And it's high time I go back.